Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first edition of Top Dog Talk podcast that does not involve Harrison Reno. It's his baby. This is his show, but he's not here. And he's going to let us run this thing together. He put a lot of faith in us, which is probably unwarranted. But here's my co host, the one, the only, the UGA legend himself, Kobe Pierce. Kobe, what's going on, my brother?
What's up, man? It's a wonderful, hot, steamy Wednesday night here in Athens. Just got off a little run and ready to do this podcast, man. Fall is not in the air in Athens, but football
No,
season is right around the corner. You know what I'm saying? So excited. More notes. First fall scrimmage done. Check. Second one coming up. Couple of things tonight talking about what went good, what went bad at scrimmage number one, and then what we're looking forward to see maybe get cleaned up in scrimmage number two.
absolutely. And like you said, like football's right around the corner. High school football's kicking off this week in full force. All the teams had their scrimmages last week. And I know we're a Georgia football show, but if you live in the state of Georgia, you know what a big deal high school football is. We both played high school football. I would venture to guess the majority of the people watching our show played high school football. It's such a big part of our fabric. So you're right. It's here. Football season's here. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get to the hot topics of the day. We're going to have three of them tonight. The first one is a fun one. What is the best high school player you've ever seen play? And I guess you don't necessarily have to have played in the game against him, but what's the best high school player that you've ever seen with your own two eyes in person?
Yeah. I went back and forth on this, trying to think through some games and who I've played against. But I think I definitely have what probably is going to be a really good answer, and you're going to be surprised about this. I don't
All
think
right.
you're going to see this coming. I played against the number one ranked high school recruit in the country for the
Oh,
class
boy.
of 2015. Do you remember who that is? He signed
Barbecue.
here. He was a Georgia Bulldog. We played against each other,
Oh,
and then we were teammates.
Trent Thompson?
Trent Thompson played
Yeah, buddy.
played nose tackle, and I played center in that game against Westover and Cairo. And I guess I'd have been 2014 at the time. But man, he just whooped my
How'd that
ass
go?
almost all night long.
Oh, man, that's a good pull from you.
Thank you.
Um, you will have never heard of the guy I'm going to tell you.
Nice.
Um, there is have you ever seen that 30 for 30, the best it never was, that running back? Well, we have our own version of that here in the state of Georgia. He played at Central Gwinnett High School, and I believe he played in 93, 94, maybe 95, right in that range. I know he played in 94. His name was Timmy Smith. He was a running back at Central Gwinnett. He is the greatest player I've ever seen with my own two eyes. Now, keep in mind, I played college football. I played a lot of football. I've been around a lot of football players. I've seen NFL players in person. I'm telling you, Timmy Smith is the greatest football player I've ever seen in my life. He was literally 6'2", 6'3", 225 pounds. He ran a 4.4 when nobody ran a 4.4, and he was a running back. And I played at Tequila. We were a Final Four team, and he scored 4 touchdowns in the first quarter against us. He was the most insane player I've ever seen. And you know what? As a matter of fact, Robert's in the comments. Robert, thank you for joining us. Juan Daniels would tell you that Timmy Smith is probably the greatest player he's ever seen. And more than likely they played at the same time. So that guy is unbelievable, unquestioned, and he was just insane. Anyway, moving on to the second. I thought that was a fun question, but anyway, moving on to the second one, and this is kind of Kobe's idea. We're going to split this up into two parts. One is how do we want to phrase it? A game that you've been to or seen in general? Seen in general?
I think you can do either way. Sorry,
Okay. Well,
my cat's also trying to make an
all
appearance
right.
on
For
the
the
show.
Georgia one, we're going to say been to. You
Okay.
had to have been there. Okay.
Okay.
So, what was the greatest Georgia game that you were ever at to witness with your own eyes?
Yeah, I'm gonna play this as I was not at the national championship against Alabama because I was. I would say the 2013 LSU Georgia game that ended 46-43. The homecoming for Zach Mettenberger is probably in my thought process as a fan the number one football game I've ever been to. Talking about just like back and forth, great offenses, scoring constantly. I mean, I rewatched that game the other day. The first two touchdowns that LSU threw in that game, the fella had one catch on the year coming into the game. He started the day 2 for 2, 89 yards and two tutties. I mean, they also had Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, and neither of them were who caught those two touchdowns.
Good heavens.
It was great. Phenomenal.
That was a great game. I think most Georgia fans would agree with you. The greatest. I had a long list. I'm much older than you, so I've been going to football games for a long time. So I had a lot to choose from. But I'm going to go sentimentally. The greatest Georgia game that I've ever been to was when we went to South Bend and went to that game up at Notre Dame. That to the day I die, I don't think I'll ever have a more emotional experience than that game. I mean, first of all, we won. And it was a close game and hotly contested, and it really mattered. And we had a freshman quarter, and so there's a lot of things that make it a good game. But just the hospitality, the environment, the fact that Georgia completely took over that stadium, I'll never forget that to the day I die, and that will be my game. So the second part of this question is, what is the Georgia cannot be included? What is the greatest college football game you've ever seen?
I'm a random poll here. Texas A&M, LSU, 9 overtimes into the 1 o'clock hour. I think it was Joe Burrow was there at the time too. It was a phenomenal game. I remember that we played like a 3:30 game that day. I come home, we ate dinner with the family, was sitting on the couch watching TV, watching the game. I guess it would probably been like an 8 o'clock kick. And so watching it, hanging out, and then it was close, back and forth, and then ended up staying up way too late to find out how it ended. And it was just what a watch. I hate that we've gone to the 2-point conversion overtime now because of that game. But
was it that game?
It was that game that they were okay, this is way too long. We've been here an extra hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes just playing overtimes.
Can I add one thing to that? Can we just not have to swap ends of the field? Let's just not do that. Let's just stay down here. That's silly.
You've seen they've made changes to overtime again. You only get so many timeouts now. Media can't stop it for TV timeouts anymore. They really want the game to end in a hurry now.
Yeah.
Which I understand, but also you only get so many Saturdays of college football. Why are we obsessed with hurry up and get it over already?
Right. Well, I get it. But all right, so there is a million games to choose from because college football, you're talking about all-time greatest game ever played. This was hard, man. I was thinking about this.
That you watched, though. I mean, you actively watched. Okay.
And I was thinking about this, and the whole ride home, I had 3 games in my head, but then one just kept coming to the forefront. And I thought for sure you were going to take this game. The national championship, Texas, USC. With the Vince Young in the corner of the end zone to win it, where Reggie Bush could have basically sealed the game, but he decided to pitch the ball, which made no sense. But and I didn't think that USC team would ever lose. I just thought that was the greatest team ever assembled, and that game was incredible. And of course, you had Keith Jackson calling it, which he's my man. I mean, when it comes to calling football games, all due respect to Larry Munson and all the rest of the guys, Keith Jackson to me is the pinnacle of calling football games. And that game just had everything, man. I assume you're old enough to have watched that game because it was 2004, right? Something like that.
Yeah, 2005. I think it was one of the first. It's the first national championship game I remember watching as a child.
Yeah, but anyway, so that is our hot topics for the day. I hope you enjoyed that segment. That's my favorite segment. I forced Harrison to implement that a long time ago, and he did. But let's transition to the actual content that you came for. Let's talk a little bit about the UGA scrimmage. Obviously, getting the first scrimmage out of the way is a really big deal. it's like so cliche, but I know the number one thing every coach wants coming out of any kind of scrimmage is health, right? They want to come out of it healthy. I did not hear of any injuries coming out of that game. I don't know if you did or not. I had nothing significant anyway. But so obviously I wasn't in the building. I assume you weren't in the building, even though you're a former player, so you kind of get some leeway there. But based on what you've heard coming out of the scrimmage, what is your biggest takeaway to start off the conversation?
Yeah, I think biggest takeaway, and it just shout out Coach Trey Scott, because he has been such an asset to this team since 2017. I mean, he's really kind of the people he's recruited, the way he coaches, his teaching style, the way he's able to clearly convey a message to these student athletes and like what they need to do, and to do a very thankless job sometimes at defensive line. They were game wreckers in the scrimmage on Saturday. They were resetting the last scrimmage. They were making running the ball difficult. They were making passing the ball difficult. And that is just a testament to them and being selfless, because if they're disrupting things, that doesn't always mean they're making the tackles for loss. It doesn't always mean that the stats are crazy. I mean, I think you could look at Jordan Davis's stats, even from 2021. They weren't blow you away statistics, but you are a game wrecker. You are resetting the line of scrimmage. You're allowing linebackers to run free, and you're really giving people fits in how they have to plan for you. And I think that there's a good chance that our defensive line is going to be good enough this year that people are going to have to plan around how they're going to, limit the havoc of the defensive line, I guess, at this point. So that was nice to hear. It's always fun to be dominant up front.
And the glowing reviews coming out about Christian Miller being completely unstoppable during the scrimmage. We've been hearing about how special he was. We've seen him play, obviously, but just to hear that he's just being, like you said, a disruptive force is great. My biggest takeaway defensively was the fact that the defense is a little bit ahead of the offense, and they were causing the offense to be pretty inconsistent, which is good, right? And it's to be expected. And of course, Kirby's never going to script these things to make the offense win. Well, I guess he's probably done that in the past because he just wanted to rip the defenses a new one. But one of the takeaways that I got reading the article by Mike Griffith from Dogs Nation today was that Ellis Robinson had a good day. And that's a guy that I've been extremely high on. That. I've told you that a million times, that Ellis Robinson is a guy that I'm not giving up hope on. I think he's going to be a really special player for Georgia. To hear that he had a good day, obviously taking reps along with was it Daniel Harris, right?
Yeah.
Taking reps aside along with him, opposite of Dalen Everett. Is really good to hear, because it's one of the biggest concerns, I think. I don't know if concerns are just questions. I don't know how you would phrase that, but who's going to be that guy opposite of Dalen Everett? And it's great to see that we have somebody who seems to be stepping up and making plays. So defensively, that's what I was excited about. I'll go ahead and give you an offensive thing really quick. Is that the offensive line seemed to look good, being protective. Obviously, it's hard to talk about the quarterbacks in a scrimmage because of the way it's set up, but to hear that the defensive line was really, really good, and then even still the offensive line looked good, that I think that's a really good thing for me. And of course, I'm always going to kind of lean on that offensive line, because if your offensive line's no good, it's hard to be good anywhere else. So I was glad to hear positive comments come about the offensive line. So on the offensive side of the ball, Kobe, what kind of caught your attention from what you've heard?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've heard that's come from different places has been that Kirby was very much promoting and talking about players coaching players, not just coaches coaching players. I think when you think back to what made part of that 2021 team so special, and when you go back and watch film, is there were a lot of players that demanded the best of other players. There were players coaching players. N'Kobe Dean, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Stetson, even Brock. There are people that are demanding you be your best at all times. Jamari Sawyer comes to mind on the offensive line back then. Those are guys that they're not letting you just talk about brother-in-law or rep. Hey man, you don't go too hard this play. I won't move too fast. I won't make you look too bad. You don't make me look too bad. We'll get out of this and we'll survive this together. Brother-in-lawing can get you killed in college football. I'm telling you, and it's the truth. It can get you beat because somebody is friends. I think that's what's hard to understand is like the team as a whole. Part of what makes spring practice so difficult and part of what makes fall camp so difficult, and Kirby would testify to this, is you're all friends for the most part. You're all brothers. You've all spent an entire winter building up this camaraderie. You've spent an entire summer building up this camaraderie of running together, lifting together, having meetings together, talking about your why. Why do you want to play football? Why do you want to succeed? Why do you want to succeed in life? You've had this emotional connection, but then you don't turn it all the way off, but you have to cut it loose out on the practice field and go, I'm going to whoop your ass. And you're going to either you're going to stop me or I'm going to whoop your ass all day. And you may want to be the best, but I have to put that aside to continue to make myself and you better. That gets very difficult the longer fall camp goes, the longer practices go. That's why, a lot of times coaches are like, you finally get to play that first team. I always feel bad for that first team we play because I know that his message is you're mad at each other. You're mad at me because these practices suck. I'm yelling at you. Now go take it out on them. It's their fault. It's their fault that I've had to be a hard ass on you for the last 6 weeks. It's their fault that Coach Sinclair was screaming at you at 6 a.m. during team runs. It's their fault for all these things. So I'm glad to hear that the players are leading players. Kind of got off on a tangent there, but it definitely is the bones of a good, maybe even a great football team to have that.
You're 100% correct, and I mean, even in high school, I remember we had a coach who would always say, "You finally get to hit somebody else," and you bring up so many great points there, and it takes a special team to be able to practice professionally every single day because the doldrums and just the repetitions and all of those things, they get really boring. Like, it doesn't matter how much you love football. The longer the season goes on, I mean, I can remember, man, those practices when you're getting close to November, I did not want to practice, man. I hated that, but it is what it is. And so I think you bring up a lot of really good points, and I think it really points to the professionalism of the players. And I think that kind of gets overlooked sometimes that, it's a lot of these guys coming out of high school are really good at football, but they're not professionals in any sense of the word about how they handle their business, whatever. And I think that's a great culture that Kirby has been able to establish at Georgia and to maintain. And it's not everywhere. I mean, that's obvious that it's not everywhere. And it's not every player. And Kirby has pointed that out multiple times that there are players on his teams that maybe didn't have that fire, passion, energy that he was looking for. So I think you bring up a lot of great points. Let's talk a little bit about the tight end room, and I'm going to kind of combine segments here, and we're going to continue to talk about the scrimmage, but also kind of group in a little bit of that press conference that Todd Hartley gave on, I believe it was Tuesday, right? I actually had a chance to watch that, and because you don't really get to hear those guys all the time. I don't necessarily listen to every Kirby press conference because it's kind of the same message a lot of the time. But I was interested to hear what he had to say, and he had talked about a little bit about those guys being leaders, and he talked about Lawson Lucky wanting him to lead and be up front, even though Oscar Delpa's a guy that's there, and just kind of take ownership of that. And it seems to me that tight end group is performing pretty well, and there's just a boatload of talent in that room. And he talked about the competition to get on the field, and that your number doesn't get called all the time, so you've got to make the most of it when it does get called. So what are you envisioning with this tight end group? Because he had also talked about these guys got to be versatile to where they can line up at the H, they can line up at the X, they can line up in the slot. And he wants his tight ends to be able to line up anywhere on the field and be able to execute. So what are you looking for, knowing that's kind of like what Hartley wants?
I think that there are guys on this roster and in this depth chart and in this tight end room that maybe were not the highest ranked guys, which is crazy. But a couple of those guys down the depth chart a little bit, he basically is telling you there is a spot for you. There is a roster spot, a travel spot. There is playing time available for you. You do not have to run a route. You do not have to be able to catch a football, but you have to be able to stick your nose in the gentleman in front of you and block until that whistle and block proficiently every time. And there is meaningful snaps in Georgia football games for you. And I think that's all you can ask for as a guy sitting behind possibly uh, Lawson Lucky and Oscar Delp, someone who maybe can run the routes, can catch the ball, but maybe their game is just missing that little bit of blocking, that little bit of balance, that little bit of doing it without the ball coming your way. Not really saying that about either of those guys because I know they've done it a long time without the ball being thrown their way. But to me, Hartley is challenging a couple of the young guys, saying, we got two really good freshman tight ends right now. The odds of traveling both of them are slim. Odds are it's going to be the one that is able to block better that's going to get to travel. They're going to get to do things positively because they can do the little things better than maybe some of the other guys. It's interesting. That room is loaded with star talent as far as high school star talent. I think that room is very unproven in college star talent. I think that, like you're saying, I think Lawson had a solid year last year. I think Delp had a year that left some things to be desired on his end. I think he even admitted that he got looking so far ahead that he had what he would consider a kind of a letdown year for what he thought his goals were. I think I'm excited to see maybe those guys all take a step back and say, "Hey, we don't all have to be Brock Bowers. Like, there's a lot of room between being a great tight end and being Brock Bowers that we can fall somewhere in between." So I have no doubt that Coach Hartley's going to get all of them right. I just think about Charlie Warner, John Fitzpatrick. Both those guys got drafted in the NFL. I think Charlie had one touchdown catch his whole career. I'm not sure on John, but there's a lot of room to be a great tight end and a great tight end in the NFL without necessarily being a prolific pass catcher.
You bring up another great point because Todd Hartley even mentioned that because they asked how much film does he show of Brock Bowers to the tight ends, and he said that he uses all the tight ends in the NFL that played at Georgia, about like Charlie Warner, for example. But he mentioned Ben Urasic by name, and he was talking about how he wasn't even drafted, but he's going to make the 53-man roster up in Minnesota because he does all the little things right. He does all the things necessary. So, you're bringing up a great point there. Some of the notes that Harrison wanted us to touch on because he, he's in the know. He's got insiders inside the building. So he wanted to kind of point out Juan Gaston, the true freshman, was getting some reps at right guard with the first string. What's your take on that? I mean, because we have seen Al Thomas, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think another freshman has started at Georgia for Kirby, has he? Offensive lineman? I think Andrew Thomas is the only one, right?
Yeah, as like a true freshman.
Yeah.
Maybe Trey Hill got a little bit of run there at guard for a little bit as a true freshman, but I agree. It hadn't been a lot. There are not a lot of players that are physically and mentally prepared to play the offensive line position as an 18-year-old freshman, 19-year-old freshman. It takes time. So to hear that he is getting reps at the first team guard, it's exciting. It means that he is intelligent. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to communicate with his center and guard. He knows how to keep people safe and to finish blocks. And so, that's at the end of the day, the best five play. And I think that Kirby still believes that. He used to preach it a lot, especially in the early days when we kind of had a mixture of guys that maybe he felt like weren't up to the standard of athlete that maybe Georgia should have been recruiting in the first place about the first five play, so or the best five play.
And another little nugget that he wanted to drop on us is that so we know the wide receiver Branch, the Branch that's the wide receiver, but his brother Zion Branch is a safety, and he did a good job at the star, which could allow Janelle to move back to safety with KJ. So that's kind of a big deal. I think a lot of people from the outside when they heard that both branches were coming, it was like, well, they took the other one just to get that one. But, we've seen this with Kirby before, and it paid dividends because he wanted Gibbs. I can't think of his first name, Gibbs, but
D'Angelo.
Right. And then his cousin was J.R. Reed. And I guess it was Tulane, right? When it out of Tulane. And they were like, oh, man, they had what a wasted roster spot. They got this guy just so they could get Gibbs. But J.R. Reed was a stud for Georgia. So, Zion Branch has come in and he's went straight to work and he's doing a great job. I know in NCAA 26 he's actually pretty good. But it's good to hear because I hate it for those kids whenever kind of come as a package deal. One kind of gets the tag as, well, he's only here to get the other one. It's not really fair to that kid because if he was that bad, he wouldn't be here. So yep. I'm really happy to hear that he's performing. You have any thoughts on that about also giving Janelle an opportunity to go back and play on the back end?
I think my biggest thought on that is that while KJ Bolden's spot and maybe, if we're talking about Dalen Everett's spot, so you have one safety and one corner that had, in my opinion, a starting spot secured going into the season. I think it's the most questions I have after that that we've had in a long time under Kirby. I don't know if we're 100% sure who's playing the other safety. I don't think we know who's playing the star. I don't know. We think we know who's playing the other corner. And then, I wish everyone a happy and healthy season with all the success possible. But it is part of the game of football that you are a rolled ankle, a high ankle sprain, a broken arm away from needing another guy or two to step up. I think that the DB room is definitely one place where I'm looking for what's the two deep look like this year for the DB room, because while it was strong at times last year, it also was weak at times last year, which is a very weird kind of feeling under Kirby that like it was good, but it was also not good. But there were also parts of our like pass rush and extended plays that gave it fits later down the year. To hear that Zion Branch is stepping up at star is phenomenal because it means that he is able to be that Swiss Army knife and do a lot in our defense. You're asked to tackle, you're asked to cover tight ends, wide receivers, running backs out of the backfield. You're asked to do a full facet of things. So like you're saying, it just one more depth piece. I'm interested to see Maddox, I think is his last name. He's the safety from UAB. I've heard a little bit of buzz about him as well. I am very interested to see about where that Aguero, Maddox, Branch kind of all finishes, because on the other side, it really kind of sounds like corner is between Daniel Harris and your man that you love so much, Ellis Robinson.
Mm. So one more tiny little thing from the spring the scrimmage that I wanted to talk about was the running back room. Frazier didn't get a lot of run for obvious reasons, and the transfer McCoy was down in the end zone running, so he didn't participate. But they said Bowens looked good, and then they said Robinson looked good, and they said that Bo Walker didn't really have a chance to do anything. So it's good. Like, I think a guy like Bowens and a guy like Robinson have been around for a little bit, and we've kind of gotten to know them. And obviously, they've never gotten enough carries to really show us what they can and can't do. But I just love hearing that we have multiple guys being productive, because that running back position is one where guys can get hurt so easily, so quickly, can get banged up and just worn down. So to know that we've got at minimum 3 guys that look really good right now is really good for me anyway. And then also a 4th guy. We really haven't had a chance to see the kid from Illinois yet. It's McCoy, right? I hope I'm not saying his name wrong.
Then, I mean, nobody talks about my man Cash Jones is back too. You never hear that name sprinkled around anywhere. Never. It's like, here's the 4 deep. Where's Cash? Where's my man Cash?
Because he always ends up getting carries.
Oh yeah, he's gonna play. You guarantee it.
Well, do you have anything else you want to add from the scrimmage before we transition to the next topic?
No, I mean, like you're saying, it's McCray. There we go.
McCray, my fault. So
Of
look at
course,
Harrison. He couldn't leave us alone, boy. He was
that's
like,
okay.
they're going to ruin my show.
We
I
are
gotta. We
the
are.
the viewership. Just I can
Hey,
already tell.
no, I have not dropped any F bombs, Harrison. You're all right.
Um, no, as far as the first scrimmage, I mean, like saying, feels good to put on pads.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 fall scrimmages, you have 3 fall scrimmages. But I think if I remember right, they're the only 3 times in the year that we full tackle at UGA, which is crazy. Which is it makes it more fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the 3 times all year you get to actually tackle someone to the ground in practice. So it makes a lot of things more interesting. So I'm excited to get out there on Saturday and watch. You know, from as a alumni fan and everything, and just kind of see what all's going on and how everybody looks. The one thing I think are transitioning to is maybe talk about the wide receivers just a touch. I
Absolutely.
think that's a group that we're also very anxious and excited to see a lot from. So let Dan take it away here on what he thinks about the wide receiver group.
So there was an article on CBSSports.com by Matt Zenitz, and he asked, "Is this the best Georgia wide receiver room in the last decade?" So obviously, I have an opinion, but I've been going first a lot tonight, so I want to let you kind of take this take this bull by the horns, and I want your take. So, is this CBS trying to get clicks, or do you really feel like this is legitimately the best running back or the wide receiver room in the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah, it's clicks for me, honestly. I think they have a ton of potential. I think that, the big three right now, the way I'm thinking of it, of Colby Young and Noah Thomas and uh, Branch, I think they have a potential to all play at the next level at wide receiver. But I think they got to go out. They have to stay healthy, and they have to perform on the field. I think their ceiling is super high. I mean, I think we could be a phenomenal pass catching team, but man, it's just hard to argue with wide receiver rooms that had A.D. Mitchell, George Pickens, and Lad McConkey in the same room. Um, that's just off the top of my head too. So I think it's mostly for clicks. I think that the big thing on Twitter right now amongst fans and different spaces is talking season. It's talking
Mm-hmm.
season. I think this is one of those talking season headlines. It kind of gets a stir in everyone, gets everybody back and forth talking. But till you prove it, till you cut it loose on Saturday, I'm not giving you any award like that. I mean, people thought Jamie Newman may be one of the best quarterbacks Georgia had in a long time. So,
Oh boy. Oh boy. Now, all right. So here's my take on it. I do think it is the best of something in the last 15 years. And I think it's the most interesting wide receiver room the last 15 years. I would not go as far as to say the best, and I agree with you. Like you have A.D. Mitchell in the room, and Lad McConkey in the room. Like, come on, man, those two guys are so good. Lad McConkey is so good. But I think it's very interesting. You talked about Noah Thomas. You talked about Zachariah Branch. You talked about the one that we got back.
Colby Young.
Colby Young. I just totally blanked. Thank you so much. But you've also got some young guys like Taylor making some plays during that scrimmage, and then the other young one. Damn it, this is why I need Harrison's notes because I always forget people's names. The other young wide receiver. I actually stood next to him when I was at Georgia a couple of weeks ago. He is so skinny. He's tall, but he's so skinny. Is it not Curry? Who's the freshman wide receiver?
I'm not coming to your help on this. You can move on.
All right. Anyway,
you had to Google it or
yeah, I'm sorry. But anyway, you got a couple of young guys that are making making some plays. They're making some flashes. But then you've all C.J. Wiley. There it is. See, this is why we need Harrison. And Taylor is the other one. But I did say Taylor though. So both of those two guys making plays at the scrimmage. But then you got Landon Humphreys, and I don't know about you, but it always seems to be like Landon Humphreys is the forgotten guy. Like like the guy just doesn't know how to play football all of a sudden. Like everybody's talking about these other guys, like, dude, he's a pretty good wide receiver. I like him. Maybe I like him more than everybody else. That could be true, but I think it's the most interesting because there's just a lot of different guys, and I don't think anybody can definitively say they know exactly what they're going to get. And I think that's why it makes it interesting because, like with A.D. Mitchell, you kind of know what you're going to get. With a guy named Latin McConkey, you kind of know what you're going to get. But I don't think anybody can definitively say they know for sure what they're going to get out of this group. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty good. I think it has a chance to be one of the more productive wide receiver rooms from top to bottom. But I won't go as far to say the best, but I don't think it's hyperbole to say it's one of the most interesting wide receiver rooms that we've had in quite a while because there's a lot of intrigue and I think there's a lot of possibility. And I think there's a really high upside with this group. I guess my concern is I don't know where the floor is. And I think that's what people, who make educated guesses all the time, they base it on the floor. Like the floor is here, but then you could potentially get to here. Kobe, where's the floor?
Yeah, I think that the floor would be at worst, in my opinion, a serviceable wide receiver room. I think. I mean, I don't think we're going to have one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the SEC like we did a couple of years ago, 5-6 years ago. But I do think that I think speed kills. You can't teach speed. I think Branch brings that. I think Thomas brings that. Colby Young has size, athleticism, physicality in the red zone. I think he is going to be a go-to like we saw last year in a Javon Wims, in a Lawrence Cager, in a big body receiver that's going to be able to go up and get them. I think that Noah Thomas is going to be similar. I've heard a lot that he is very unguardable. He's very quick, strong hands. To me, that also excites me in contested catchability. I think my biggest question will be where are your home run threats and how often are you willing to kind of take that swing? Because you had a home run threat in Arian Smith last year, and I know that the Jets camp and everything out of Jets camp is Arian Smith has figured it out. He is a catching machine. I hope he is. I love him for it. My man was 50-50 at best on the deep balls last year. He could be open, and he got open, and he has saved our asses more than one time. But when you talk about as an offensive coordinator, you work all week. You game plan, you watch film, you look at tendencies. You see that if you run the ball off of, in this formation and you run the ball to the right, they tend to correct with safety rotation this way. So after you've done that and set this up, we're going to take one shot. We are going to run play action pass. We're going to take our drop, and if they do what they're supposed to do, Arian Smith or wide receiver, whoever, should be wide open for this play. If you drop it or miss that throw, you've wasted a whole week's worth of someone, some unpaid intern has been watching that all week and has presented it to, Mike Bobo or whoever ahead of them, and it's gone. You're not going to run it again. The moment you run it again, they're going to be all over it. So I think that if this wide receiver group can just do what's asked of them, plus make the plays when the plays present themselves like that. They don't have to go out and be otherworldly. They don't have to be, 2019 Ohio State out there just riddled with first round wide receivers. All I ask is when the opportunity presents itself for you to catch the ball and you make a average to above average play, you go make that play 80-85% of the time.
Harrison brings up a good point. If the running game is really solid, then it takes a lot of pressure off that wide receiver group, and they just have to be serviceable. I think one of the things that I always try to guess is who's going to end up being that crutch for the quarterback? Who's going to be the guy that he can rely on that always goes to? I mean, obviously Brock Bowers became one of those guys where, short down situation or short yardage situations, he's always available. When you need a play, you kind of went to him. Who is the guy out of that wide receiver? And I'll even throw the tight ends into that because I think a lot of times tight ends end up becoming that safety blanket. And for me, for my money's worth, I think a guy like Noah Thomas has a real opportunity to become somebody that we can count on. When you just need to play a guy you can go to. But I also think Lawson Lucky is that guy as well. I think, and this is no slight to Oscar Delp. I think Oscar Delp was really, really good, and I watched him torch Mill Creek twice. But yeah, I think Lawson Lucky has an opportunity to be that guy, and it's just a feeling that I have. But I think Noah Thomas for me, and I think Lawson Lucky will be the two guys that end up kind of becoming that safety blanket. What kind of feel do you have there?
Yeah, I think that again. I think about what Ladd and Brock had in common that made them such a fantastic safety blanket. Even AD Mitchell, honestly, what did the three of them have in common? That they were open and they caught the ball. Even if they were going to get hit, they caught that dang thing. I mean, if you watch, I think the 2023 game against Auburn that Brock just takes over and basically like wills us to win. I mean, he caught everything. Anything thrown in his general vicinity. I mean, it wasn't always the best throw. It was not necessarily that he was wide open, but it was force feeding that man, and he came down with him, and he got you positive yards. And I think at that point, that's going to be who falls into that safety blanket for a new young quarterback. Is, hey man, I'm in trouble. I'm looking for somebody. I'd like to look for somebody who is open, because then I'm going to have more confidence to let this ball go and rip it, because it's not in a tight window. It's not in a lot of danger. The person is, for college standards, he is open. So I'm going to probably let this loose a little quicker without having to hesitate. And then when I do let that rip, you know what keeps you and me from getting our butts chewed by Kirby on the sideline is that you catch that ball and we make a positive play out of it. If I let that rip in a panic and you drop it or you tip it and something bad happens, then we're both in trouble. Or really, I, as the quarterback, are in more trouble for throwing it in the first place. So I think that's where the safety blanket's really going to kind of come into play, is who can I count on, and who's going to help brother out sometimes.
So I think we covered the wide receiver, but there's one other thing that just kind of popped in my head, and I just wanted to say this out loud. The one player that I have not heard a word about is Drew Bobo, and that is the best news in the world, because the guy's stepping in to play center, and we have not heard anything about that being a problem. And, it's like one of those things, with offensive linemen. If you don't hear their name, it's probably a good thing. If you do hear their name, more times than not, it's a bad thing. So I don't know what your take is on that at all. We've not talked about it. We didn't discuss it, but the fact that I've heard absolutely not a word about Drew Bobo makes me feel really good. How does you feel?
I think that he has been, from a fan's perspective, a pleasant surprise. From a player's perspective, it's tough to keep coaches' kids off the field. I mean, he's just been around. I mean, his dad's an offensive coordinator. The man knows coverages. The man knows, slide protections. I mean, I know that that's kind of redundant, because quarterbacks tend to make, coaches' kids that are quarterbacks, whatever. I mean, all this is a fat quarterback. I mean, man is having to call his own game up there and protect Gunner any way he can. So to be able to be in those meetings and to be able to watch that film, has just been helpful. And luckily he has the physical assets to go along with that, because I definitely know that he is versed in football knowledge.
Well, do you have anything else you want to talk about? Is there anything else tonight that's on your mind?
No, I think that we're going to end it there. Just I feel like this was a good quality episode without Harrison. I think it flowed pretty good, and we're going to get on out of here before we do anything dumb or ramble on way too long.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. If you have an opportunity, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Let's try to pump these numbers up a little bit. But again, thank you so much for joining us. That's Kobe. I'm Dan. We'll see you next week, 7:30, same place, same time. And Harrison will more than likely be back. So thank you very much. And as always, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.